The mystic path and so-called spirituality are not the same thing. Many pursue spirituality, but few enter the mystic path. Many follow a religion, but few will enter its mystery. The risk in today's world, with the reaching success of myriad spiritual teachings, is that people do not recognize our true destiny, or the mystic path that leads to ultimate reality. Most spiritual teachings today are positive psychology in disguise, and at best it may influence our baseline, which can be very positive, but the true mystic path as walked by the masters, mystics, saints, was a path of innocence, regeneration and rebirth, a literal second puberty into godhood. This teaching has been obscured. The hidden way that led to life is now almost totally darkened, even by the religions that once knew it beyond its mere symbolism. We have replaced the mystic path with so-called spiritual teachings which do not reflect the true light of the Great Way, nor do most of the teachers today even merit the mystic path. Eventually anything will be labelled spiritual, and all trace of the mystic path will be vanished from the common world. We seem to be in a spiritual oblivion, a deep mystical crisis which to me is symptomatic of the end of innocence. I believed for a long time that I was on the mystic path. I read the books, did the practices, and listened to the teachers. But after years of this, I realized something was missing. My own experience of the true mystic path was eventually born out of sorrow and melancholy, a collapse of self and the spiritual concepts that I was holding to be reality. Unfortunately, the part of us that seeks spirituality, at first, is the same part of us that seeks comfort, pleasure, delight, and the avoidance and rejection of pain. This is why we can become attached and sedated by spiritual teachings rather than be liberated by them. As the saying goes, knowing the path and walking the path are two very different things. This revelation freed me from the cage of practices and teachings that I was using to escape the real work which was waiting to unfold within. Spirituality was feeding my conceptual mind and moulding my inner narrative, but was never actually aligning me with the true path as walked by the mystics and saints. I was not being saved, I was being satisfied. This meant that I could call myself spiritual and do all the so-called spiritual things and still be heavy in spirit, sinking in a sea of false light. And eventually the weight of unreality plunged me into the dark night of the soul. One must arrive at metanoia, the complete change of heart from the lure of the world to the call of spirit. This is the dark night of the soul which breaks us out of our conceptual mind and reveals the reality of the mystic path, here and now. It seeks to dissolve our attachments that keeps us from our original state of innocence. Even the most luminous teachings in the world today are leading us away from our own metanoia and rebirth. And the secret is this: if a teaching does not advocate or recognize innocence as the foundation, it's not the mystic path, it's something else. The so-called devil appears as an angel of light. Now the restoration of innocence is not easy. It's revealed in myths and symbols as a great battle for the crown of nature. There are two forces within us, the solar and the lunar. Each seeks to overthrow the other. Now the true mystic path is of union, to become the Ouroboros, the serpent biting its own tail, the unification of light and dark. The Indian sage Yogananda made it clear to his potential students that if they are to study under him, they must first be completely established in innocence. In India they call brahmacharya, which is celibacy of body, purity of word, thought and deed. Innocence is the key that opens all doors to higher reality. The true mystic path has nothing to do with staying comfortable in the world, chasing things or trying to feel good all the time. This cycle keeps us asleep to our ultimate destiny. The true mystic path is a stepping off the worldly path. The real path is salvific and apocalyptic, transfiguring our very nature from root to crown. It is a redemptive wilderness, the desert of the real. Most spirituality is conceptuality. It's not leading to enlightenment at all. It's leading to a conceptualization of enlightenment. I don't think anyone really knows what they mean when they talk about enlightenment. The mystic path has become vague, abstract, and even undesirable. If we are too comfortable on the spiritual breadline, we will not cultivate the fortitude to awaken the fire of reality. The mystic path is a sacrificial offering of all that is not serving higher destiny. It's not that spirituality is wrong, but without laying the first stone of innocence, its teachings are of lead, not gold, sowing seeds of disappointment, not deliverance. The fanciful presentation of spirituality and New Age ideas are keeping the first eye asleep. The mystic path is the desert of the real. Innocence completes the circuit between root and crown. The root is a dark and primal evolutionary force, and the crown is its heavenly destiny. Vague spirituality disarms this power and leaves us mystically infertile. We need a ripened, generative nature in order to flower, free from passive, mindless indulgence and abstraction. Once corruption sets in, it hogs the life force and becomes very difficult to slay. Innocence is the sword of vigilance. There's not one mystic, saint or liberated individual I can think of who was liberated through indulgence and self-deception. They all began by laying the first stone of innocence, in the building of the everlasting temple. Spirituality today makes itself compatible with the very things that keep us in exile. There are all kinds of spiritual teachings, most of which are false teachings precisely because they take the roots out from under us. And we rejoice in this because it takes away the sting from life. But this sting, the scorpion kiss, is what stimulates the fire of mysticism. The Gnana Agni, the fire of wisdom, the fiery nectar of contemplation. The ascent is impossible without the fiery roots. That's where the serpent of wisdom resides, waiting patiently for innocence to clear the way for its flight into the fullness. Many spiritual seekers speak about how they've realized the nothingness and declare that all is nothingness, emptiness and void, which these are important teachings in the right context. But I've noticed that most individuals having claimed this have clearly bypassed the wilderness of redemption. They are trapped in the false crown, the shadow of God. They may feel really good about this and enjoy these so-called spirit experiences of nothingness, but after these experiences, they're back to baseline. They have not reached enlightenment or liberation from the world. What this means is that they have not transmuted the hidden fire. The serpent of wisdom is still asleep at the roots. They are in the false crown, looking at the universe with two blind eyes instead of the first eye of gnosis. They think they are at the peak, but are actually in the role of the fall, staring down into a poor reflection of the apex, and like Narcissus, will eventually fall into the waters of illusion which we have mistaken for reality. This will force a confrontation and hopefully an initiation with the serpent of wisdom, which will be transmuted into the true circuit of ascent. Thus many seekers are ungrounded, like a kite, stuck in the air without a carefully built foundation, and without the root and crown in union. The false crown, without anything to rest on, sees nothing, the emptiness. The true crown, attained at the apex of the mystic path, sees the everything, the fullness. Again, innocence is what fertilizes and conceives the entire circuit of ascent. This is why many spiritual teachings are more likely to lead to derealization and psychosis than lead to enlightenment. The keys are in our hands. There is no teaching greater than the one seated in every human heart. The teachings we approach outside of us will either save us or slay us, depending on our own interior convictions. The true and sincere seeker will not fall for anything less than reality. Even if the teachings are wrong, Some deeper intuitive power inside of us can redeem even the worst advice into a greater revelation.